You know, there's nothing better than soup on these cold winter days when you can feel the warmth from the bowl spreading through your hand. It really just warms you up inside. Truly, there's nothing better. Look, it's July in the South. What do you want from me? It's 100 degrees outside. My air conditioner's old. I am not eating soup. We can pretend the ice cream is soup. Just go with it. But really, sometimes you do take soup out of the microwave and it is piping hot. And if you have sensitive hands like me or, kids that you don't want to get hurt, it's really convenient. You stick the whole thing in the microwave and then you can actually lift it out using the little points. The fabric's going to stay cool so you're not going to burn your hands. Or maybe you're a little gremlin like me and you want to eat your soup on the couch or in bed and you don't want to be bothered with things like tables and placemats and manners. Either way, it's a win-win. These guys never fail to impress, so let's learn how to make them. As always, I'm going to have a PDF in the description, and if this sort of thing interests you, make sure you like and subscribe because I've got new videos coming out all the time. So, let's get started. Let's go over the materials we need for this project. First, we're going to need two 10-inch squares of 100% cotton fabric. Now, it has to be 100% cotton because this is going in the microwave. If it's plastic-based, like polyester, it's going to melt, and we don't want that. So make sure it's 100% cotton. If you plan on making a lot of these bowl cozies, I recommend getting a layer cake. Now, a layer cake isn't just a really nice dessert. It is also what we call in the sewing and quilting community a pre-cut. It is usually 42 10-inch fabric squares. This is actually a charm pack. It's 5 inches instead of 10 inches, but you can see it all coordinates really well. It's pre-cut, so all you have to do is grab and go, so it can be a real time saver. Next, you need 100% cotton batting, also cut into two 10-inch squares. Now, this is where you have to be careful. Most batting isn't actually 100% cotton, even if there's a big old cotton ball on the cover. There's a binding agent called scrim, which helps hold the mostly cotton batting together, but it's usually polyester based. And remember, we don't want any plastic in our bowl cozy. I typically use the brand Wrap and Zap because it's easy to get, it's generally pretty cheap. Most of your smaller fabric stores will have it, as well as the big box stores like Joann. Next, we need 100% cotton thread in either a coordinating or contrasting color to our fabric. We're going to need pins or clips to hold everything together. We're going to need universal needles size 90-14 because we're going to be going through a lot of layers of fabric, so we need the heavier needles so we don't skip any stitches. Then we need something to mark our batting with. I really like these friction pins. They disappear with heat, so if I mess up, I iron over my mistake and try again. You can also use a water-soluble pen. Just don't use like a pencil, a pen, or a Sharpie. Then we need some sort of straight edge. I'm going to use my acrylic ruler, but a regular ruler will work just fine. Then we need something to poke out our corners. I'm going to use my little stiletto here, but you can use a chopstick, a mechanical pencil, a pen, whatever. Just make sure you don't accidentally poke through your fabric or mark it up. This is something not all of you will need. This is a seam jumper, and it helps your machine start sewing on a project that is really thick. I'll go over how to use it later on. Some machines come with this, some machines don't. Your local fabric store might have one. I've never seen one at like a Joann, but yours might. I know you can get them on Amazon though. And last, you're gonna need your sewing machine. We are going to take our ruler and we are going to draw a straight line from corner to corner. Batting can be a little hard to mark up, so you'll see me going over the line a few times, so hopefully you'll be able to see it a little better on camera. And then we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side, just corner to corner, making a big cross. All right, after that, we are going to draw a straight line right in the middle using the edge of our batting and that center point from the diagonals to make sure we get it nice and straight and precise. It's okay if it's not super precise, but we're going to draw a line all the way across our batting. Then we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side so that we have a big plus, and then we'll have 8 lines drawn on our batting. So these diagonal lines are going to be our stitch lines, and the straight lines that make the plus are guidelines for our darts. So darts are pretty common, especially in garment making, because they give dynamic shape to fabric. In this project, the darts are what turn the flat fabric into a 3D object. So just to show you, I'm going to clip the sides of the batting so you can see that once the fabric is pinched, it starts standing up into that classic bowl shape. We need all the darts uniform, so we're going to measure them out. The measurements I'm going to give you are pretty standard for most bowls, but darts are really customizable, so if you have very flat or very tall bowls, you might want to play around with the measurements so that these cozies best fit your bowls. But again, these measurements should work pretty well for most bowls. On either side of the straight lines, we are going to measure out 1 inch and make a mark with our pen. We are going to do this on all 4 sides. Then we are going to measure up 2.5 inches on the straight line, again on all 4 sides. Once your dots are made, give a quick glance to make sure that you measured everything correctly. This will just help save some time at the end. If you have the heat erasable pen, remember you can iron over it. So now all we have to do is connect all of these dots so that we get 4 nice little triangles. Make sure you do it on all 4 sides. And remember, if one of your triangles looks a little off, go ahead and remeasure it to make sure you didn't mess anything up on accident. Once you have your 4 darts drawn and measured, we are going to do all of those steps again on our second piece of batting. Again, double check to make sure that both squares of batting look exactly the same. Now we are going to grab one of our fabric squares and one of our batting squares, and we are going to put them wrong sides together, making sure everything is even. Batting can be a little clingy, so it might take a few tries, but try to get them as even as you can. If the edges don't line up perfectly, that's all right, but we don't want more than 1/8 of an inch difference between the fabric and the batting. So on our square, we should see the pattern side of the fabric on one side, and on the other, we should see the marked side of the batting. Go ahead and pin or clip it in place so it doesn't move around on you, and then go do the same thing with your other piece of fabric and batting. Once we have both of our squares clipped, we are going to sew from corner to corner on the diagonal on both of our squares. So I'm going to do that and be right back. Alright, so I've sewn my 2 squares following those diagonal lines I drew earlier, and I've taken the clips out because now my fabric and my batting are secured firmly together by my stitches. The next thing we need to do is sew our darts. What we do is we pinch the fabric right sides together on that triangle, making sure that the straight line we drew is on the fold and the points at the bottom are exactly even. Then clip or pin the fold in place. Now, I've had lots of practice with this, so I don't always do this step anymore, but if you're struggling to keep your points even, I recommend putting in a pin on one point and then putting the same pin through the other point and folding from there. Just be careful not to poke yourself. Darts can be hard to get right, so be patient with yourself. You'll get it. Now, on that diagonal line we drew, we are going to go over to our sewing machine and sew a straight line, and we are going to tie off the point at the very end. You can backstitch, but if you're planning on getting into garment making, tie off that point instead of backstitching. We're going to start at the point on the bottom edge and just stitch all the way down that line on all four sides. You're going to do the exact same thing on the other fabric and batting square. So now we have our darts sewn and tied off. Our bowl cozy is standing up on its own, but now we need to reduce all of this bulk. So you're going to grab your scissors and you are going to trim away this excess fabric on the dart about 1/8 of an inch away from your stitch line. Make sure you don't accidentally cut your stitches. Go ahead and trim away any excess thread while you're at it, then repeat this step on the other piece. So now we have our two pieces standing on their own, looking good, but we have to combine them together. So we are going to take our two pieces and nestle one inside the other, right sides together. Make sure that you are matching up your points and your stitch lines as best you can and pin them in place. Then make sure that your darts nestle in against each other and pin those too. You'll need to do some adjusting and forcibly moving your fabric down because it wants to cling to itself. Pin it in place all the way around the bowl cozy, keeping everything as even as you can. So it's all pinned in place, but we need to be able to turn the cozy right side out later, so when we sew, we will need to leave an opening. I'm going to grab my pin, this time my water-soluble pin because I can't find the other one, and make a 2 or 3 inch line on one side. I really want to make sure I remember to stop, so I'm going to put some pins in at the beginning and end to give my brain an extra reminder. Now we are going to go to our machine and sew all the way around our cozy with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We are going to start at one end of our line we drew and remember to backstitch. When we get to a stitch line on one of the points, we are going to pivot, which is just making a sharp angle. The way we do that is we keep our needle down in our fabric through the stitch line, lift up the presser foot, and turn the whole cozy until it's lined up straight and we have a 90-degree angle. I'm sewing using a 1/4 inch presser foot, but a universal foot works too. Some machines have a preset stitch for a 1/4 inch, so keep an eye out for that. So watch this pivot. I slow down when I approach the stitch line and stop when my needle pierces it. Then I lift up the foot and turn the whole project, lower the foot, and keep going. Alright, so I've sewn all the way around. Not everything is lined up perfectly, but I'm not going to sweat it. What I am going to do is make sure there aren't any holes. So I'm going to take my stiletto and insert it into the opening between the fabric. Then I'm going to run it all the way around that seam, making sure it doesn't poke through any holes. If I find a hole, I need to go back and sew over it to make sure I won't have batting spilling out of my cozy. I'm all good, so now I'm going to grab my scissors and clip my corners. I'm just going to trim off the fabric on my 4 points, being super careful to not cut the stitches. This is going to give me some crisp points when I turn my cozy right side out, which I'm going to do next. So I've turned my cozy right side out through the hole I left. I'm going to take my stiletto and I'm going to help poke out all of my points so they look nice and sharp. Now I do have to figure out what I'm going to do to close up this hole. I can either whip stitch it shut by hand or go over to my machine and top stitch it. I'm going to top stitch for this video, but if you know your machine doesn't handle thick projects well, go ahead and hand sew it shut. There's a ton of videos out there on how to whip stitch. First though, I'm going to go over to my iron and iron this bowl cozy flat using a lot of steam. I'm going to make sure that the seam allowance in the hole I left is even, so I'll be ready to sew it all shut. I've got my bowl cozy ironed nice and flat, and that open seam is even with the rest of the cozy. Now I need to sew all the way around at about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to set my stitch length longer to about 3.5 because thicker projects prefer longer stitches, otherwise you might get some skip stitches and run into some problems. I'm going to start on one of my dart lines so my beginning and end aren't obvious and sew all the way around, pivoting just like before. Right here, my sewing machine doesn't like when things are thick and uneven, so I'm going to grab my seam jumper. Folded cardboard or fabric also works, you just need your presser foot all at the same angle. Slide the seam jumper under your presser foot, but take care the needle won't hit the sides. Lower the presser foot and put your project in line with where you want to stitch, and then keep sewing. You're going to keep sewing all the way around the bowl cozy and then back stitch at the very end. And now, all you have to do is trim your thread, and then you're done. And now you have a microwavable bowl cozy. I hope you guys are proud of yourselves. I know you all did a really great job, and thanks for sticking around and sewing with me. If you like what you saw, make sure you like and subscribe. I've got more videos coming out all the time. So, I'll see you next time. It's still July, and I'm still not eating soup. All the soup girlies are going to think I'm a coward. I am.